Story time. So a couple of weeks ago, I found myself in conversation with a man who is currently using dating apps to find his partner, his person, some romantic connection. And he tells me, he says, every time I see a woman's profile that says soft life, I immediately swipe left. And I said, why is that? And he says, well, what does soft life mean to you? And I found that part interesting because seeing soft life on a woman's profile was immediately met with disdain and condemnation. Swipe left, you've disqualified yourself from the pool. Yet you would inquire about my definition so that you would express curiosity, someone who's not in the dating pool, because I think I've made it pretty clear on this channel how I feel about being in a catalog of romantic prospects. And I think the question asking me what my definition of soft life was seeking confirmation of an idea that has been floating around for the past couple of years, because millions of women have embraced this phrasing, soft life. And the term soft life actually originated in the Nigerian community, conversations amongst women, and attestation that in order to be worthy, okay, in order to be valued, that a woman did not have to be laboring and performing, and that she could experience ease and rest without having earned it, without having put so many deposits in the bank that she could finally earn her way to a softer existence. Now, it has since been misappropriated to some Americanized, colonized version of luxury and pampering, but that was not its intent. Why is the idea of a woman prioritizing rest, a woman prioritizing herself, a woman putting her needs at the front of the line for a change so triggering? Why does the term soft life trigger ire and disdain and visceral reactions on both dating apps and in the real world? And in this video, we're going to talk about not only what a soft life is, but why some people are so viscerally agitated at the idea of a woman prioritizing her own needs and opting out of unpaid, invisible labor. Keep watching. Hello, I'm Dr. Shantae, and welcome to my YouTube channel. What I do on this channel is reframe social narratives, usually from a trauma-informed and sociological perspective. So let's get into it. Soft life. So this term originated in Nigerian online communities, and it was not about linen sheets and Egyptian cotton and trips to the spa and luxury and wealth and pampering. What it was about is this idea of how difficult it is and how difficult it has been for women to rest or to relax or to experience joy or pleasure without feeling guilty about it or without feeling like they have to earn it. Now, of course, Western culture and these yet to be United States misappropriated it into something that meant matcha and clean girl beige aesthetic. But its original intention is this idea that as a woman, rest does not require a permission slip. And so many of us have gotten into that mindset that we have been groomed to give and are resistant to receive. So many of us were raised in households where if you were sitting around seemingly idle, somebody in your household would come along and say, "What are you doing? Don't you have something to do? Don't you have some clothes to fold? Don't you have some dishes to wash? Don't you have some homework to do? Don't you have some chores that need doing?" In other words, if you were resting, that was considered laziness. That was considered being trifling. That was an indication that you were not pulling your weight around the house. And so fast forward, now that you're in your own home, now that you have your own family, now that you have your own children, you are in this daily cycle of, let me make sure the house is taken care of. Let me make sure the food has been cooked. Let me make sure the groceries have been picked up. Let me make sure the cars have been washed. Let me make sure that I have worked and done all of this labor before I can finally kind of look around and say, okay, I can rest. And the point of a soft life is you can rest without feeling like you had to earn it, without feeling like unless you put a certain amount of labor dollars in the bank, you're not able to draw down on rest. And I have experienced this. I've had friends who have experienced this. So when I got pregnant with my daughter, me and two other friends were pregnant at the same time. And there was always this idea that the fathers, if they wanted to go to the barbershop, or if they wanted to go to the golf course, or if they wanted to, go do whatever, they just went, all right, honey, see you later. Mwah, mwah. And that was the end of that. But when we wanted to go and get our hair done, when we wanted to, visit our friends, when we wanted to go and have lunch with Beth, then it was like, okay, let me make sure the kids are washed up. Let me make sure their clothes are laid out. Let me make sure I pack their lunch and things like that. Like, let me make sure I made preparation to leave and go enjoy myself. Otherwise, I felt bad, or they would feel bad because they just left the house. And it begs the question, why was it okay for the father of this same child to do exactly that, but it wasn't okay for you to do that? And a lot of this social messaging that comes both in families and outside of families, that it's the woman's job to make those sacrifices, that it's the woman's job to do that labor, that it's the woman's job to do that prep, okay? And if she hasn't done that, then what kind of mother are you? What kind of wife is that? Then here comes the condemnation, here comes the shame, here comes the feeling like you haven't done enough to earn that lunch, to earn that manicure, to earn that outing, or earn a few hours to go and get your hair done. So that is what Soft Life was addressing. This idea that it is okay to experience joy, pleasure, connection, communion, to go and do things that just make you happy without feeling like you had to do all your chores first, okay? Without making sure that all the I's were dotted and that the T's were crossed. Now, this is not me saying walk out the door and leave your children hungry. Let's be intelligent engagers of the material, okay? What I try to do here on YouTube is really kind of raise above these hot takes and uninformed opinions. Like, let's try to bring a little bit of intellectual honesty to the discourse. Okay, so let's not take it to extremes. Of course, I'm not saying neglect your family so that you can go and get your nails done. What I am saying is that there is a disproportionate share of the labor, of the chores, of the responsibilities that tend to fall squarely on the woman's plate, and that experience tends not to be the case for the men. Can we agree on that? Okay. If we don't agree on that, I have research. So let's get into the research. I want to introduce two terms to you. So I'm going to put these terms on the screen, and I have about maybe 7 or 8 studies that are going to be in the description because I love sending people on research side quests. So please fact check, do your own research. Let's get out of this idea of just kind of scrolling and then just kind of running off with information that we have not invested the time to study, to research, for ourselves. By all means, I encourage further study. So here we go. The research. One of the terms I want to introduce is this term called weathering. Okay. Weathering is a term, here it is. Weathering is the cumulative biological toll of chronic stress from racism, marginalization, and constant high effort coping. Not one bad day, but decades. So women, particularly Black women in America, not only are our lifespans shortening, but the quality of our lives are greatly diminished and dwindling, because in addition to all of the labor that I talked about in the first part of this video, there's also the systemic battling, the fatigue that comes along from systems of oppression, from people who feel entitled to your labor, for people who feel entitled to have access to your intellectual and emotional capital, from people who essentially take and take and take and take and very rarely give, where there's very little reciprocity. And over time, okay, when you've been doing this for years and years, okay, so people think about the lives that your grandmothers lived, and you think about the lives that some of our mothers lived. There's a term for this. It's called weathering. And what does that have to do with lifespan and quality of life? I'm glad you asked. There is another term I want you to look up. It's called telomeres. So telomeres, if you think about like shoelaces, those little plastic caps at the end of the shoelaces? Telomeres are kind of like that. They're like the plastic ends at the ends of our chromosomes, right? And the purpose of the plastic caps at the ends of the shoelaces / chromosomes is to kind of like keep the shoelaces from fraying, right? Like it's what keeps them from going haywire. When you are under chronic stress, when you are weathering, okay, and you are taking on more than your fair share, when you are doing the lion's share of the work with very little rest, when you have to dot all the I's, cross all the T's, bring home the bacon, serve it up in a pan, make sure the clothes are washed, and make sure that all the trains are running on time, it can shrink your telomeres. So regardless of your chronological age, okay, like you might be 35, but you're aging like a 52-year-old because of that chronic load and the toll that it's taking on your heart, on your nervous system, on your cholesterol levels, on your blood pressure, etc. And there was like this blockbuster study using the cardia cohort, putting this up on the screen here, that found that Black adults' biological age ran meaningfully ahead of their chronological age, while white adults' biological age trailed their chronological age, a multi-year weathering gap. So it's one thing to wake up and have to, put one foot in front of the other and just kind of, carry water, chop wood. That would be one thing if that was kind of everybody's experience. But when you have to carry water, chop wood, in addition to dealing with systemic oppression, institutional oppression, horizontal oppression, both in and outside of the community, that adds a whole nother layer of chronic stress to your system. And so when women, particularly Black women and women of color, who are facing these additional barriers, who are facing these additional systems of struggle, are saying they want a soft life, this is not, I want a Mercedes Benz. This is saying, I want to rest. I want to live. I want to experience ease and joy. I want to be able to send my children to outings amongst their peers and have a fair amount of confidence and assurance that he or she is going to come home. Hello, somebody. Nolan Wells. I want to be able to put my child behind the wheel of a car and say, hey, follow the rules of the road, instead of having an additional conversation about, hey, if you get pulled over, keep your hands on the steering wheel at all times, say yes, no, ask permission to do this, that type of stuff, okay? Because I tell people all the time, you might be in the same country, but we're not having the same experience. You might be on the same plane, but if you're in first class and somebody's in economy, you're not having the same experience. And so when you have to even justify that or explain that to people who are in first class, like, what? It's not like that. It's not like that at all. Like, the snacks are great up here. Like, didn't you get the champagne? No, honey, I didn't get the champagne. I'm back here eating goldfish crackers. Okay. So when you have to carry water, chop wood, in addition to the worries about keeping your child safe, about keeping yourself safe, about keeping yourself out of certain places and spaces due to systemic oppression or racial oppression or gender oppression or what have you, well, that is going to take a biological toll on your health, on your immune system. And so soft life is not this aspiration to luxury, this aspiration to be kept in some lofted and gilded cage. Soft life is saying that I have value above and beyond my output. Soft life is saying that I can access rest and ease and pleasure and joy without having to feel like I have to earn it, without having to feel like I have to jump through extra hoops to get it, without having to feel like I'm not deserving or worthy of it, without being shamed or condemned by my peers or by family members or people in my surrounding area, because I'm just sitting here reading my book, because I'm sitting here putting a puzzle together, because I'm sitting here flipping through a magazine, because I'm sitting here with my feet up, that I don't have to pay a tax to do that. Because when we don't find those portals of joy and access and pleasure, when we don't find those things, well, it brings us full circle back to the shortening of our telomeres, the shortening of our lifespans, and the reduction in the quality of our lives because we are under chronic stress. Which brings me to my last and final point. I have said, and I will happily live on this hill. Be wary of anybody who sees you as a resource to be used rather than a person to be loved. Because the anger about soft life is, in part, who deserves to live that life? Insert crickets. Who deserves to have access to ease and joy and pleasure and rest? Because you may not say the quiet part out loud, but people have some real fixed ideas about who deserves access to those things and what are the criteria for accessing those things. And the criteria is not the same across genders, it's not the same across class, not even a little bit, not even close. And so the anger, when somebody expresses the trigger, the visceral response to soft life, is not about softness at all. It's almost always about a loss of access to unpaid, invisible labor. It is almost always a conversation about worthiness, about who deserves, about who has access. And if the resistance is, you shouldn't be resting, then what is the implication? That I should be working? For whom? Doing what? Says who? Many of us have been groomed to give and are resistant to receive. Honey, I'll figure it out. I'll do it. I got it. I'll take care of it. I'll pay for it. I'm gonna make something shake. Don't worry. I got it. I'm gonna figure it out. I'll do it. I got it. I'll figure it out. I'll do it. I got it. But then when somebody tries to give you something, okay? Oh no, you ain't gotta do that. No, I don't want to have to owe. I can't receive because I don't want to have to owe. It's okay for me to give without an expectation of reciprocity. And then when somebody does try to reciprocate, I resist that because you ain't got to do all that for me. I don't need all that. Where did that come from? Where did that come from? Who did you get that from? Who passed that down to you? Because I encourage people all the time. I said, the minute you feel triggered, the minute you feel uncomfortable, the minute you feel some kind of way, there it is. It's gold in those heels, baby. That's where you dig. Lean into the discomfort and start pulling that thread. Why is this pissing me off? Why is this making me angry? Whose voice is this? Is this my voice? Is this my mama's voice? Is this my granddaddy's voice? Why is this bothering me? And unpack it. When people say do the work, that is the work. That is the work. So this conversation about softness is less about fluffy pillows and more about a loss of access to people that we feel should be working. A woman should be keeping her house. Says who? A woman should know how to cook a pot of greens. Says who? A woman should know. Like, where are we getting this messaging from? And then the bigger question is, whose interest does that serve? Now, depending on who you ask, you'll get a lot of different answers. Somebody will even try to throw the Lord into it. Hey, people love to throw in a sprinkle of Jesus, but that's a different video for a different day. Whose interest does it serve for you to be consistently laboring? For you to be consistently showing up without an expectation of ease, rest, or reciprocity? Whose interest does that serve? It's not yours. It's not yours. And so the anger is about her cooking. The anger is about her domestic labor. The anger is about her planning. You know, she gonna make those doctor's appointments. She gonna make sure the kids get their shots and immunizations, you know, before school starts. The anger is about the emotional regulation that she provides. I'll do it. I'll take care of it. You know what? I'll go pick up your dad's prescription because I know that you all don't get along. I'll take one for the team. That's what the anger is about. The unpaid invisible labor that so many people feel like they are entitled to. And so when she takes a rest, well, who's gonna clean up these dishes? And you know, it's interesting. In these yet to be United States, there is a historicity, okay? There's a historical referential point to a group of people who lost access to unpaid labor. Gee, when did that happen? And the origin of that practice, okay, the origin, the mindset, okay, to even engage in the idea that you can take possession of another human life and make this person work. That whole mindset starts with dehumanization, meaning I don't see you as a person, I see you as a tool, which is why I go back to my original premise. Be wary of anybody who sees you as a resource to be used rather than a person to be loved. They have done studies. I'm putting them all in the description, okay? That women in heterosexual households consistently carry more of the domestic load, the cognitive labor, the planning, managing the household and family life. In 2023, they did this systemic review of 31 studies, okay? So 31 different studies, they kind of summarized them and synthesized them and found that in those studies, women perform the greater share of mental labor, and it is directly linked to emotional distress, chronic stress, nervous system dysregulation, lower relationship and life satisfaction. So a lot of the anger around soft life is this indignation that somebody who should be taking care of you wants to be taken care of. The nerve, the audacity, the cheek. So this is where I leave you. You know, the opposite of exploitation, and many people, many women are being exploited, okay? They are. The opposite of that is not laziness. It is humanity. Humans are not resources to be mined and extracted. Humans are people to be loved, experienced, communed with, doted on, cared for, nurtured reciprocally, okay? Reciprocally, okay? Because if you want somebody to do all that work, you know, then cut the check, pay them. But to have an expectation of this decades-long invisible labor, in addition to doing that for the household, but then also going out into an oppressive system, okay, of racial injustice and class disparities and all the rest of it, and then get indignant when that person says, I want ease, I want joy, I want softness and pleasure, and I want to be able to access these things on a regular basis for the preservation of my own self, and to take umbrage with that. Yeah, that deserves some interrogation. That deserves a second look. As always, if you have any questions, comments, takeaways, I invite you to my comment section, and I will see you next time.